Hi everyone and welcome. For those of you watching the live now, I can see that people are tuning in. I'm Patrina from the Association of Pet Dog Trainers and it's National Puppy Day. Today I'm joined by Beverley Cuddy of the Bark Angel, which we're going to hear lots about, and Dogs Today, which I'm sure you all know and have read. And of course, full member of the APDT, Jane Arden. She's the owner of Waggawuffins Canine College and she also produced the Smart Pup subscription box, which is fabulous. Welcome, ladies. Thank you for joining me. Beverley, if you just want to tell everyone a little bit about what you do, so they can get to know you.
Oh right, okay. Gosh, could be here all day because I'm very old. I started in dogs as a child, showing dogs, and I was too young to know what I was doing. So yeah, sorry, there's a background noise in here. I'm actually in the office. I've not been in the office for some time, so I'm quite sort of freaked by office noises. Yeah, so I started with bearded collies, bred them, but not seriously. Probably only had about 8 litters over a decade or two, and then stopped because I was living with my parents. Since then, I've been pet person, I suppose, because the last one of my show dogs was nearly died of parvovirus, so it was totally not equipped to deal with the show ring. It was very, very nervous, and had no socialization. So that was the end of showing, and that was I just turned into a pet owner, and I started then working for the Kennel Club, and then I owned Dog World and Our Dogs, anything with the word dog in it, basically. And then I was the launch editor of Dogs Today magazine, which started in 1990, which attempted to give the pet dog, the family dog, a voice. And that's 30 years ago, 30 odd years ago, I've been doing that. And then I've also sort of diverted off to assistance dogs charities. I've got involved as a chief exec of one of those, sat on a Department of Work and Pensions working party for 2 years, trying to get assistance dogs some sort of status of law so that pet owners who wanted their dog to become an assistance dog could get the same access rights. But that failed horribly, down to a training issue because we couldn't agree. The civil servants found that there was no way of saying what was a trainer who could accredit. So the whole thing crashed and burned after 2 years. So I've been a campaigner. This is turning into a speech. I've been a campaigner. I was involved in Lucy's Law that got the puppy out of the pet shop. And I've probably been campaigning against puppy farming for a good 30 odd years, and I'm not done yet. I am desperate to sort it out so that the public care about where they get their puppies from. Because at the moment, they're really fussy where they buy their eggs, and they're really fussy about their chickens, but they don't take any notice of provenance, because as soon as they look into the eyes of a puppy, their brain turns to mush and they take it home, no matter how big a criminal is selling them that dog. So there you are. That's me in a very large nutshell. Over to you, Jane. I'm sure you'll yours will be much more sensible.
Okay, I'm Jane Arden. I run a dog training centre in Bury, Lancashire, called Waggawuffins Canine College. I started out getting into dogs with my first dog, which was a rescue dog. I then moved into dog showing, did some dog showing, and I shown Leonbergers and Polish Lowland Sheepdog. And yeah, I kind of just got into dogs and training and started going on courses. Eventually, I set up my own classes at the local church hall because there wasn't much reward-based training going on in the area at the time. And then I ended up taking voluntary redundancy. I was a business improvement analyst. I took voluntary redundancy and decided to go into dog training full time. I currently have 7 cockers. I have bred 4 litters. Up to now, I have one bitch at the moment who potentially has puppies too, but we don't know yet. And yeah, I went on and did loads of study. I did my BSc in canine behaviour and training at Bishop Burton, did the Cope diploma, loads of stuff, like obsessed with learning. Done some teaching at university as well, so I've done some lecturing on canine behaviour at university, and I also did some for Cope as well. Currently, what am I doing? Generally helping people with high drive spaniels that can't cope with them. Doing quite a bit of reactive dog work at the moment. And I think like my passion is people getting things right in the first place. I think, when we deal with behavior problems and dog problems, the things for me is, prevention is prevention is better than cure. And that goes right back to the responsibility of the breeder of what they're producing, and also the responsibility of the buyer, because buyers create markets.
Perfect. Yeah,
That's me in a
absolutely. Yeah, great. And now you have your subscription box. You're a published author. Don't forget, Jane's got a fabulous book,
how
Mission
about that?
Control. And you run a whole
Yeah, so
big dog school.
yes, keeps me out of trouble.
Yeah. So probably, I reckon in the last 10 years, 20 years ago, you didn't even hear of someone being a dog walker as a job, but now that's exploded. And in the last 10 years, dog ownership in the UK has increased significantly. In COVID, it went completely nuts. And I wondered what you guys see as like whether we're still seeing a fallout of that, of sort of puppies brought from the wrong place, or people not putting the work in, or how you feel about it all, really.
Go on, I'll go first. So obviously rescues have got like when I kind of look at Spaniel Aid, I follow Spaniel Aid, they're just like bursting with dogs that have been handed back. And I do think that one of the problems is people's attitudes are like, it's like rehoming is part of dog ownership. It's like it's like rehoming a dog is a normal part of dog ownership. It's like, oh well, I get a dog, and if I can't cope with it, I just rehome it. And there's rescues everywhere. And I've been like, when I've done work rescues, what really shocked me was when people come in, was their attitude was like, this is your job. This is your responsibility to take my problem off me. And I, at first, like being exposed to that, I was like, wow, like this is bizarre. So I do think that's a big part of the problem, that people, when they often buy dogs, like it's like, oh, if it becomes a problem, we just rehome it. So I think attitudes towards buying dogs needs to change, and that, it needs to be more of a responsible purchase, and understand that it's the dog's lifetime. There's always going to be genuine reasons for dogs to be rehomed. So that needs to be there, but it's about really people kind of working with, like, understanding the responsibility of that purchase, and the breeder as well, understanding the responsibility of the fact that they brought that dog into the world, onto this planet. That's their responsibility as well. So I think, like, through the pandemic, there's a lot of dogs been rehomed. There's a lot of dogs that have got behavior problems, and I tend to find a lot of people like blame COVID for their dogs' problems. And I don't actually think I personally wouldn't say COVID has a lot to answer for with regards to dog problems. We could still go out, we could still mix, and socialization was probably better for dogs during COVID because there was less pressure to have to say hello to everybody. So I kind of thought COVID was a good thing, to be honest, with regards to socialization. But there was a lot of irresponsibly bred dogs appeared. There was people charging £3,000-4,000 for dogs, and they were, that was just purely for profit.
Yeah. A lot of nodding going on here, Jane. I think that there's a few things that we can blame COVID for, though. I think it created a perfect storm. It meant that the people who were profit based on breeding, who were not in any way welfare based, were the ones that were able to ditch their waiting lists and put their prices up and keep charging more and more and more money. So, and they were also able to respond to increased demand by buying in or acquiring, let's say, more puppies and more breeding stock, because their objective was just to make money. So we had an awful lot of people in post purchasing who had never owned a dog before. And because they'd paid so much for those puppies, when it went horribly wrong, as it often did, because they were buying from people who were rearing in sheds, were dragging dogs across Europe, various other horrible beginnings. And then when they're not there supporting people, when they were trying to house train dogs that had, really had a terrible start, people didn't at that point take them to rescue. They instead put them on sale again online. So dogs were ricocheting, and people were trying and trying and trying to make more and more money. Recoup some of their cash until they then gave up, and then rescue ended up with dogs with more problems than they'd ever seen before. And from talking to people like Hope Rescue, it used to be that they had always had a lot of dogs in, but they used to have quite a lot without any problems that were easy to maybe then ferry around the country to shelters. But they were finding a higher percentage of dogs with problems that needed sorting out, that weren't easy to rehome to, they needed exceptional owners to deal with the problems that those dogs had picked up. So I think COVID has created some things that we're having to cope with still. And I think also the percentage of dogs that are being picked up through the system that have absolutely no record on their chip. So the breeder has not appeared on the chip. There's no record of who implanted that dog. They are completely anonymous. And those people who made all that money walked away with no consequence. And we're all dealing with it. And rescue is absolutely stretched to breaking. And I think that's something that we need to, we have to make the consumer passionate about this, because they are fueling that whole world. They are giving money to people who are only taking, they're not giving, and they've got to start seeing that dogs are family, and that you've really got to embed. I know it's hard, because I think a lot of people, when they have a puppy class, and they don't really want to ask too many questions to where these dogs come from, because the people have already made the mistake at that point. But it'd be really nice if we could stop people making these mistakes and stop giving that money to people who really don't care of the mess that is resulting. Also, I think fashion has changed. People seem to be yet again going for these big dogs because I don't know whether people are feeling, insecure and scared in society, so they need ever bigger dogs. And these are people who have no idea how to cope with them, and TikTok has shown them how to train them, which is terrifying. And I think we're seeing a high percentage of these people getting chomped by their own dogs. And unfortunately, as a country, we don't go, that's people being stupid. They will go, oh, that's terrible. Those dogs are, let's demonize the dog. And it's just Darwin at work, really, isn't it? It's people bringing a big dog into their home that they can't control, and then it's attacking their own family. So, we're all doom and gloom now, aren't we? Sorry about that. Yeah, but it's pretty scary, isn't it, out there?
I mean, I think 10 years ago we talked about status dogs as being like the pit bulls and things like that, and maybe American bulldogs and these kind of dogs that were being used by gangs and still are today. But I also think there's quite an argument for status dogs in all walks of life. So everybody's dog that they get, if they go to a pedigree breeder, they choose that dog for a very specific reason, and it's quite often the way it looks or how people perceive you owning that dog. So any of my clients in, I shouldn't name names, but like Chelsea, Fulham, any of those kind of London areas that are really posh, they all want a fox red lab, or they all want a working cocker, because they want people to think you've got a nice country house somewhere, and that's their status. Do either of you see much of that? And I realise you live at quite different ends of the country. Well, I suppose Jane's near Cheshire, we could say, but Beverley lives in quite an affluent area of the southeast, right? But do you see that sort of status thing going on, and people buying puppies because it says something about them?
There's a lot of people
copying. I think so I live in North Manchester, and if I got my dogs down the street, the majority of dogs that I see now are Staffies. We've always seen Staffies, but now we've got XL bullies. Everything's got cropped ears that you see. And so, I'm seeing more and more Mallies, At one point, you hardly ever saw a Mallee. Seeing more of those, and then your big kind of cane corsos, your big XL bullies, and your little bullies, French bulldogs, millions of them, very, very popular. So I do think certain people are attracted to certain kinds of breeds of dogs, like you say, for whatever reasons. In my classes, we mostly see Labradors and Spaniels and Cockapoos, but I do think, and what's interesting is we don't really see bullies in the classes. We don't get them coming to puppy classes. We'll get the odd one. We don't see many French bulldogs these days, but we used to. When they were just Kennel Club colours, we actually used to get quite a few through. But now we don't see, like in the classes, we don't see any of the fancy coloured French bulldogs. Again, you might get one or two. Dachshunds are very popular at the moment. They've become quite a popular breed. So you do see changes, and I do think everybody chooses a dog for a reason. So I'm just wondering if maybe I've got 7 cockers, so I look like I live in the country.
Or the north on the peaks or something.
You'd pass down here. Cockers are 2 a penny. Everybody's got a cocker, or a sprocker, or a infinite number of names that they all tell you authoritatively this is what it is, and you go, it looks exactly the same as my dog, but never mind, whatever. Not really seeing the cropped ears in Surrey. We've probably a bit behind the curve here, but lots of labs, just family dogs. There's not. I think it's quite an old village that I live in.
I was going to say, Beverley, you've not been to Croydon lately, because you'll definitely see some cropped ears. As soon as you start, or like Epsom, as soon as you start going a bit towards the inner cities, you start to see more of that type of thing,
I suspect.
In Manchester, we have, there's like no branches on the bottom of the trees.
Oh.
Because everyone has their bullies hanging off them. So when you go in the park, there's like no branches on the bottom of the trees.
So how does Oh no, go ahead.
Cool. No. But it's a very quiet little village, and the only odd-looking dog is one of mine, which is a rescue that grew and grew and grew, and it's a cross between an old English sheepdog and a golden retriever, and it looks like part donkey. And everyone who comes into the pub goes, "What on earth is that?" And we'd love to say that we sought this extraordinary cross out, but it was a complete accident. It was meant to be a bearded collie crossed with a Springer Spaniel. But lots of crosses around here, whether they're by design or they're very proudly, this is a Romanian rescue with a terrible story. People have paid thousands and thousands for their rescues around here, and they're delighted to tell you all about it. That they brought this dog across several continents, and you sort of go, well, is this quite the best use of resources? I don't know whether you're seeing this, but rescue tourism, people falling in love with photos of dogs that have never actually been pet dogs ever, but they've been brought over here, and then people are just probably need endless help trying to get them to live a normal life. But I'd like to see a lot less of that. I think that's because it doesn't actually solve the problem in the countries where these dogs are coming from. It just encourages them to breed really gorgeous dogs that are then going to be trafficked, basically, as far as I can see. But there are some people doing a great job of rescuing dogs from far afield. But I do worry about the long-term basis of it, where it will end. We've got the postman here. We haven't actually got any dogs in the office to bark. So pretend.
My question was going to be, if somebody's looking for a dog, what kind of things do they need to think for when they're choosing a breed, maybe? Maybe Jane might have some thoughts.
So the first thing I would say is research your breed. So find out about what your breed was bred to do. I would definitely kind of broaden your range of how you do your research. So a lot of people will go to a breeder, and a breeder will be like, they're amazing. They're fabulous dogs, and they tell you like all the amazing, wonderful things about them. Good breeders will usually try and put you off, to be fair. That's usually a good sign. If the breeder's trying to put you off, then they're making sure their puppy's getting the right home. So you have to be aware, obviously, of when you ask about what a breed's about, is about the kind of sales pitch. I think it's always good to kind of join some of the breed groups, because you find out what problems people are having with them as well, and what kind of issues they're having. So that's another good way to find out. But really important, what the dog was bred for, what it's going to be like, and what potential behavior problems does that breed have, because the reality of it is all dogs will have some kind of challenge with them. There's always going to be some kind of challenge, and that's generally down to whatever they were bred to do. I mean, I have plenty of clients who are like absolutely mortified when they find out that their Cocker Spaniel was like bred to be involved in blood sports. They're like devastated. So it's important people understand why their dog does what they do. So for me, research about your breed is like absolutely the first thing that I would do. Part of that research would also be to understand not only the character and personality of the dog, but also the health. So the other thing that I would be looking at, I've become.
We've lost her. Let me bring her back on. Here we go. Carry on, Jane. It's live. It happens.
So the other thing would be health. Is to understand also the health of what health problems the dog has. Understanding that there's a big difference between a vet check and health tests. Okay, so if you're going to buy a puppy that's been vet checked, it's had like a vet look at it for 2 minutes, visually and physically, very quickly. So health testing is DNA tests, hip scoring. There's lots of programs within the British Veterinary Association. So, and if you go on the Kennel Club website, you can find out what recommended health tests there are for the breed that you're choosing. If you're choosing a crossbreed, I would still be going onto the Kennel Club website and seeing what health tests the individual breeds have, and I would be expecting that both parents of the crossbreed dog, if it's an intentional breeding, that they have been health tested as well, because some of the health tests are crossed over. with certain breeds. So that would be like the first thing that I would recommend is know what behavior your dog's going to be, how it's going to be, is it going to fit in with what you're looking for. And then the next thing definitely be understand health tests, and don't research your health tests, don't take the breeder's word for fully health tested. If somebody says fully health tested, like look at what actually fully health tested is, because a lot of people say they're fully tested and they're not. Some of them are fully tested and have failed, and they still advertise that they're fully tested, but they've actually failed the tests. So you've got to do. When I was looking for a Rottweiler for my stepson, I was surprised how many dogs were like fully health tested but actually had like terrible results. So it really is a buyer beware market. And people market very well. So I would definitely say buyer beware, health test first, understand the breed of dog you're getting, as your kind of definitely your first port of call. And one question I see a lot with people now is they'll come to me and they'll say, Jane, I want a dog that's going to do this, 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 and this. And they'll say to me, is this breed of dog going to meet my needs? And my first question back to them is always, for the first at least 12 months of that puppy's life, you're going to have to meet its needs if you want it to eventually meet yours. So people put so much pressure on puppies. Their expectations often, I would say, are completely unrealistic. Yeah, the puppies they've got needs, more needs than generally that we have with regards to what we want from them.
Yeah, it's a lovely way of looking at it, actually. People don't realise quite how much work they're going to have to put into that puppy, but if they do it for the first year, they've got 15 fantastic years, possibly after that, Beverley, have you got any thoughts on that? Or has Jane just gone into it so well?
Very wise words.
Yeah.
Part of what we touched on there was how difficult it is for the new buyer to actually navigate all this, because even when you're within the dog world, unpicking health testing is something you have to be on top of all the time because it keeps changing. Plus, the DNA tests are only telling us what we already know is a massive problem. There are a huge plethora of other problems which we don't yet have DNA tests for. So you can have the best health tested dog on the planet who still is going to cost you a fortune at the vets and break your heart. And I think that's something we have to bring it to the heart of the new puppy owner, is that they're not buying a car, they're not buying a kitchen. Dogs are really delicate little souls, and things can go wrong, some of which are sometimes the puppy owner's fault. There's so many people who go, I made sure I got the best hips and elbows, and then you see on Facebook they've been hiking this puppy up, Ben Nevis or something or other. You really need someone to hold their hand, and good breeders will unfortunately, sometimes these words of wisdom are lost, because in the excitement of taking the puppy home, they only take in about 2% of what people have said, and they may not realise that running up and down the stairs, jumping off things, and doing all these crazy things with young puppies may actually have a toll to come on their elbows, and even the best made dogs can be wrecked by an over-enthusiastic exercise person. So that's really, years ago, I started something called Dial-A-Dog before the internet, where we tried to simplify health testing so that the general public didn't have to become, a PhD student in health, because often at that stage the vets didn't know. If you went in with a breed of dog, there was no central point where you could at that stage work out what tests were appropriate for that breed. and the hips and the eyes were in different places, and nobody actually had a heart testing scheme till relatively recently. So it was very bitty. And now we've got this world of DNA tests, which it can look terribly impressive to a pet owner. Oh, it's been tested for 126 things, most of which it was totally impossible for it to have anyway, because they've just done the package that, you know, is possibly not the right one. But I think we need to have somebody at who's there to guide, because I think it's a huge task to learn all this, whilst being also aware that people, when they're about to get a dog, are in a vulnerable emotional state. And even with all the best education and all the best advice, as soon as they get their eyes on a puppy, they're going to take it home, no matter how bad, no matter how awful that breeder. And we've really got to stop them getting into these terrible scrapes by only introducing them to people who care about the outcomes. And I think that the small ethical breeder that provides a lifetime of aftercare needs, we need to first of all tell the general public there is such a mythical beast as a good breeder, because most of them have no idea. They think all breeders are, you know, possibly, you know, Fred West or something. I don't know. There's a bad image of breeding that we've got to overcome. That there is such a thing as people who love dogs, who breed them and do it really, really well. And we need to somehow or other build up the reputation of the good, small, ethical breeder, and make maybe some more people join those ranks, so that those huge, unethical, farm-based, nasty people go and do something else to make money. Let's take away the market of yet more innocents who are going to regret at their leisure making a horrible mistake. So I'd say, yeah, health, we need to make sure that it's a two-way street. It's not just the breeder does everything. You as a pet owner have to not let the dog get hugely obese. You've got to make sure you don't do the exercise that the dog's frame isn't ready for, and make them aware that, you know, there's a consequence to their actions, because I think some of them are unaware that they can break a dog. And I don't know how we do that, because vets will give you the lecture when you go in with the overweight dog, and or, you know, they make you feel, you know, very silly, but I think it's too late when you've got you've made a mistake. Breed wise as well, I'm sorry, I won't shut up about this. Breed wise, I think people fall in love with a photograph, and there's nothing you can do to shift it from them, because it's just like when they've got it in their head that, you know, this is when they go to the hairdresser, say, I want my hair to look like this person, and the hairdresser's going, your hair doesn't look any, you know, you can't do that. You still want it. You've got to work with what that pet person thinks they love, and then come up with a suggestion of a dog that may fit their reality and their lifestyle. Because it's almost hardwired that some people like dogs with sticky up ears, and you can't persuade them that dogs with the soppy looking ones, no, they're not going to go for it. So I do. I have done in the past hour-long sort of Zoom calls with people in this sort of receptive state, where they'll tell me what it is they think their ideal dog looks like, and then I'll ask what it doesn't look like, but what it's like to live with, and what their life's like. And there is pretty much a dog to fit everything, from a couch potato to a triathlete, and it's just trying to fit the one that looks a bit like their ideal dog, but isn't going to, and often it's intelligence as well, because if you give them a really intelligent dog and they're absolutely useless, it's not going to work, is it? The dog is going to just take over. So you've got to sort of, without saying to them, you're not clever enough for this dog, you just say, this one will possibly fit your needs a little better, because it may be for decades and generations have been bred just to be a pet and not actually have any hobbies, which would probably drive a lot of people totally balmy. But there are dogs out there that are quite happy, just usually greyhounds, but just happy to go to sleep on the sofa, and it's just making sure that people find their ideal match.
Great. Can you just adjust maybe you just need to fiddle in your laptop where your microphone connector is. It's just gone quite crackly for everybody, Beverley. Have a little
I'm
fiddle
sorry.
with that. That's all right. It happens.
It could be I've got a very annoying necklace.
Maybe it's hitting it. Not sure.
Yeah,
it sounds like cabling.
Rocky error. So is that better? Because if I hold it now.
Yeah,
Sorry.
maybe. Yeah. So Jane, enter ethical breeder from stage left. What do you think ethical breeders look like? What kind of things do they do with their puppies? What could people look for, apart from the breeder being like, I'm going to ask you all these questions if you want a puppy from me?
Yeah, and try and put you off. So I think somebody who has that they've researched the decision, the stud dog that they've used. So they've done research, they've made a conscious decision on, like I'd be like, why did you choose this? Why did you choose this stud dog? Is a good question. If they go like, oh, because he's pink and blue or whatever, it's like, well, yeah. So ask the question, why did you choose this stud dog? And then also I'd be looking at how their setup is at home. So what the puppy's being exposed to. And what are they doing with their puppies? So what are they doing for those first 8 weeks or 12 weeks? Some breeders will keep them for 12 weeks. Anybody who's wanting to palm them off at 6 weeks, that would ring alarm bells for me. I'd also be asking, like, what are you doing with your puppies? So where are they being kept? Making sure that it's all clean and hygienic, that the puppies are being exposed to. If you're buying a pet puppy, you want a puppy that's been reared in the house, that has heard the washing machine and the TV and Alexa and everything else that goes on in people's houses these days. And you want it to have been exposed to all that. For me, like, one of the first questions I ask, especially if the puppy is not local, is have you exposed that puppy to travel? Because there's nothing worse than that puppy never being in a vehicle than leaving its family and going on a 4-hour drive of something it's never experienced before. At 8 weeks, they can be in their first fear stage. So sometimes that whole leaving can be very, very overwhelming for them. So I would be looking for a breeder who's actively being proactive, putting a lot of work in to the puppies, to making sure that they've been exposed to the normal day-to-day stuff. I always tell people, if they're looking for a puppy, I say to them, go and Google and look up puppy culture, because if you again can educate yourself on how puppy culture works and what it is, there are other programs out there. The Kennel Club, I don't know if they still have their puppy plan that they had, which was quite nice and simple actually for breeders to follow. And it enables you then as a puppy owner to see what a responsible breeder should be doing with their puppies. So you can go and it just means then that you're asking questions about something you know about as well. So I think, understanding early neurological stimulation is really important. Understanding development stages in puppies is another good way. So getting yourself a book that covers development stages in puppies from birth, so you can see what they're learning and experiencing and what is going to be a positive experience. So for me, like, an ethical breeder is somebody who's going to be putting the work in to those puppies, to make sure that they've got the best start in life, from a mental well-being point of view, from a development point of view, from a health point of view. What are they feeding them? Are they worming them? What are they worming them with? There's always going to be different views and opinions on things like feeding and worming and vaccinations. And I wouldn't say there's one specific, like an ethical breeder does it in a specific way. That's probably going to fall down to your personal views, whether you're going to be like, we just want the hardcore drugs, or we're going to go holistic. That's going to be personal preference. So it's good for you to also find a breeder that's going to match your beliefs with regards to that kind of stuff as well. You know, I remember when I was at the RSPCA, somebody brought 4 12-week-old cocker cross collies in that they'd bred, and they had family coming around for Christmas, so they brought them in on Christmas Eve because they wanted them gone. And these puppies, they'd not been wormed, they'd been fed Weetabix. They were just a mess. They were coughing up worms. And I just remember, like, I was obviously fuming and finding it very difficult to be nice to this person, and decided that I never wanted to work in rescue after that experience. But again, it's like that's like worming is so important, because the worms, like, if the worms get hold of those little puppies while they're still developing, it's going to have such a detrimental effect on their development. So yeah, you know, like health and hygiene and all that kind of stuff as well is really important as well. So, you know, it isn't just about early neurological stimulation, it's the whole package. What food are they feeding them, what they're rearing them on, you say, even what kind of exercise, what stuff's going on there, what kind of floor are they running around on. That would be a big one for me. I'm like completely, like last time my litter were on Eva foam. They had like a whole Eva foam area. So again, you know, stuff like that, because you don't want like little puppies on slippy surfaces, because that's certainly not going to, you know, when they're learning to walk, they need really good traction. So yeah, you know, it's like the whole package. What is that ethical? What is that breeder done above and beyond, you know, to make sure they've got everything? As you know, Beverley said before, you can do all the health testing in the world and still get a sick puppy. And that's the reality of it, is we don't know what's going to happen, but you want a breeder who's done everything they possibly can to avoid, you know, anything going wrong.
Interesting. Any thoughts on that, Beverley? Hang on a minute. You've muted yourself. I think I can. I can't unmute you. You have to. Should be a little mute button. And try it again. Nope. No, you're still on mute. There should be a little bit on the screen that says mute, unmute. Looks like a little speaker. Can you see it?
Built-in microphone.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh right, I've gone without my headphones now. Let's just you hear all the background noise in here. Yes. Now where was I? Yes. Breeders. I would like to find a new word that isn't breeder. I think there's another type of person now that's a breeder trainer, because I think half of it is really, if you're not making those first 8 weeks or first 12 weeks prepare that puppy for the life it's going to lead, then I think you're just a farmer, really. I don't think you're not really doing the job. I think that we should actually acknowledge how important it is that you really, the hours and the work that's put in to do it properly are just phenomenal. And I think that's something that the public really needs to understand, of what that looks like. That you don't necessarily want to see someone who's got a purpose-built setup. Some of the most amazing breeders do go all grand designs and actually build their home in a way so that they can have the dogs all around them and have puppy rooms in their homes, and it's fantastic. And they're the aspirational role models that I think we should be trying to show young people who are thinking of breeding in the future, of this is heaven, really, if you can have it all set out with the with different areas within your own home, so that you are, your whole family has to live those 8 weeks or those 12 weeks. Otherwise, I don't think you're doing it properly. I'd like to see people sort of really, unless they're buying something that's the size of a horse, I'd be questioning why the dogs aren't in the home. I don't think there's that many good breeders that don't do at least a huge percentage of the rearing in the house. They're my little sort of pet peeves. People who live in a beautiful house that doesn't have any dogs in it, yet are dog breeders. I think that's peculiar.
I suppose there's an argument there on what are they breeding dogs to do. So if they are Dachshunds or something like that, and they're not sending them out down holes so they can catch badgers, then they probably should have those Dachshunds in the house. I think if they're working dogs, then there could be an argument that mum lives in a kennel, you're going to live in a kennel, I'm going to raise you in a kennel. And I might expose you to all of the things that we still need to do socialisation wise. But I personally wouldn't automatically be like, no, you mustn't get a Labrador from there because these dogs are bred outside, for instance. But if you're like in a mid-terrace and you're breeding West Highland Terriers in a shed in your garden, probably not the one for you. I think it is a bit.
I think gun dogs. I've always sort of gone. I can understand it when you've got wet dogs that you need an intermediary area where they can dry out that isn't your kitchen, and then they probably come in when they're nice and clean. But if you don't live with your dogs, I just wonder why you've got them. How much time people are spending with them if the dogs are remote. And I've seen it even in my own beardy breed. We had people who had dogs that didn't live in the house. And I just thought, you could have goldfish. If you're not living with them, I'd say from any pet person who is thinking of getting a puppy, try and find one that's reared in a home. And if they're not in the house, think about why. I know there's a lovely breeder in Scotland of Irish Wolfhounds who has 11 in the house. And I would, at the drop of a hat, go and get a puppy from her. Because she's also health testing. They're living longer than most other Irish Wolfhounds live. And the dogs are a family. And I think that's the difference between dogs as family and dogs as product. That's the way I look at it. That if you've got a relationship with mum, and it's not just, how many litters are we going to have and then we're going to move her on. I mean, I would be questioning what happens to mum after these litters. Is mum actually living a full life? And I'd like to see the public be more discerning. And because inadvertently they are funding breeding slavery, as far as I see it. Because any mum that only lives to produce, I don't think is living a life a dog should have. And I don't think, there are enough dogs in this world. We don't need to have intensive farming of dogs. So I think it's time to walk away from people who intensive breed and don't give quality life to dogs. There's going to be an exception. You're going to find somebody that has them outside, but spends, every waking minute outside with them. But I worry about dogs that are shut away, that you don't, that never see people. Because I just think, I was talking to Mark Evans, the vet who was on, he was the RSPCA chief vet for a while, but he's always on television doing various programs to do with dogs or helicopters. And he was saying that maybe we made a mistake all those years ago, in the 1960s and 70s, where we this idea that we should neuter everything that we see before they grow up, and that every love dog should be neutered. And it sort of made it so that the public had they disassociated where he's come from. It became that the mum of your dog wasn't a loved dog. It was the dog was loved when you got it, and you had nothing to do with the chain. So I think we've probably gone the other way now, where dogs that make fantastic family pets, we often are a bit sneery about it, that, you know, it's a pet quality. Whereas actually, I think that's the top of the tree. A dog that is a really good pet and lives a life where they're loved from, you know, from 6 weeks to 15 years, and bring up a next generation to love them. So I'd like to see some sort of some pride in people who breed purely for them to be pets, because I think it's you know, it's nice to be, you know, we're very protective of people who breed vulnerable breeds and try and save them, but I think actually it's quite acceptable to be a breeder of pets if you do it really, really well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but hasn't the recent regulation of breeders made that actually a lot harder? So those that just want to breed one litter a year or something, it's actually quite difficult to do that kind of thing now. Am I right there? Am I wrong there? Have you guys got any thoughts on that?
Well, I think we were both on the same call with DEFRA that showed that it really is a case of geography. It was what your council interprets what is a very badly written piece of legislation as to whether or not you can have one litter, or whether, if you live in one part of the country and you sell one puppy for £1,000, theoretically you should be licensed. Whereas if you live a few yards away over a border, they won't want to even talk to you unless you breed 3 litters.
Right.
And it's the same piece of legislation, it's just differently interpreted. And we're hoping that the next revision has a bit more sense. But if you live in Scotland, I think it's 5 litters. You've got to breed 5 litters before you're licensed. 5 litters is a lot. So, yeah, we are a nation that's divided by legislation and how it's interpreted. But yeah, nobody was lobbying for the small breeder when that first load of revision came around. I think we had a lot of charities around the table who went, adopt, don't shop, adopt, don't shop. And it just, nobody really went, well, actually, the best breeders are the small ethical breeders. But there was no organisation that was lobbying for them. So we're trying to play catch up now.
Any thoughts on that, Jane, or should we move on to some questions?
I think just as Beverley has said, you know, it's like with the like the pet breeder is, you know, we kind of like, we made them extinct. The like well-bred, robust pet dogs were all responsibly neutered. So now we are really only left with dogs being bred for money, working purposes, show, which is physical appearance, fancy colours. So the genetic selection of dogs, with regards to being pet quality, as Beverley has just said, which is looked down upon, is it's quite hard for people to be able to purchase. Wouldn't it be fab if there were people out there just breeding pet dogs for pet people and making genetic selections based upon the ideal pet dog? And the reality of it is, I mean, I don't, when I breed my cockers, I don't breed them to be pet dogs. I breed them to be working dogs. And I will not sell my puppies to pet owners who've never owned a dog before, because they're just not going to cope. That's the reality, and they're not going to meet my puppy's needs. Yeah. So yeah, you know, I think that's really important as well, is what are people breeding for, you know. And it's like you said, Patrina, you know, my Stig come from working stock. He was the bitch was whelped in the house, but then they were moved out to the kennels, and he's like he's a fabulous dog. But he still had a lot done with him. He was still nicely reared, but he was reared as a working dog, but he was reared very well as a working dog. You know, so yeah, it's one of those that it's you know, if you're a first time pet owner and you're looking at a dog, then you know that kind of dog might be too much dog for you anyway. You know, just because of its breeding, you know, full stop. So that's, you know, these are all things to consider. with purchasing puppies. And
Yeah.
one other thing before I forget, which I was going to mention before as well, about like when you're getting your puppy, what you're looking for. I think we talked about things going wrong. Insurance, get your puppy insured. Like if you're getting a puppy, get it insured, and get it insured as soon as you get it. Even if you've got a few weeks free insurance with somebody, I would be getting that puppy insured. Don't wait, and don't think that you can. To me, being able to provide veterinary care is part of responsible dog ownership, and it's the owner's responsibility to do that. So unless you've got a spare 10-15 grand lying around that you can pay for something that might happen, get yourself insurance.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that people will drop a couple of £1,000 on a dog, on a puppy, but then they won't pay for basic medical insurance and then complain about how much vets cost, because they do cost
Yeah,
probably more now everybody's insured, but they've got to make a living too, and a lot of them are actually working for not very much money for big chains of vets these days.
yeah,
They're not
yeah.
raking it in as
A
independents.
lot of pressure.
And also trainers, it's like, oh, I can't afford puppy classes, but your dog costs 2,500. You need to drop
Yeah,
£100 on puppy classes. Come on.
yeah, yeah,
I think it's difficult though, because I think insurance is again, it's a bit like health, health, understanding that all the health issues. People will think it's like buying car insurance, and they'll go online and they'll pick the cheapest without realizing why it's the cheapest.
yeah,
Because pet insurance isn't the same, even though it's called pet insurance. Those people who are buying the ones that there's a limit per condition, or there's a time limit, and they only find out when they run out of cover that they've bought badly, and then they can't find anyone else who'll cover them. So and some of the really expensive insurance is eye-watering, certainly for some breeds. If they're picking a breed that is going to have loads of claims, they may find that it's uneconomic on every front anyway. I mean, that's the terrifying thing, is that even if you've got a relatively healthy dog these days, I'm finding that the vet costs have gone up so much more than inflation that I do worry that there'll be a lot of people who are too terrified to go to the vet, because insurance doesn't cover all of it. The simplest of things seems to be over. It's £1,000 a go down here. I don't know whether it's as bad as that up north, but you can go in with something relatively small, and you suddenly look at the bill and you think, how on earth did that happen? And I think it is.
Well, I think there'd be a lot of vets that would probably give you a whole long list of why vet fees are so much more expensive, and it has gone up, but
I think it's something that the new pet owner may not be prepared for, especially if they've had dogs 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
yeah,
Their memory of what was affordable and what was achievable is very different. Whereas now, if God help you if your dog has got anything wrong after 12 o'clock and you end up at the emergency vet, because really it is a case of you've got to, if you haven't got a credit card that's got a decent amount of wedge on it, they won't even talk to you. And I think that's the shocking thing, is that how things have changed, that credit is seen as essential for you to even be looked at. And I don't know if you saw on the Crufts programme, Noel Fitzpatrick was sitting on the sofa. He was saying he'd operated on a dog a couple of nights before who had been involved in a car crash, and the owner was in hospital in a coma, and he was the only vet that would operate, because obviously he's quite a wealthy man, but no one else would take because there was no credit card. And I think that's something that comes a bit of a shock to the pet owner now, is that it is much more. Well, there's certainly the days of James Herriot were always fictitious, but these days those vets have got very little grey area where they can they have to follow protocols.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Yeah, they're owned by big groups, and those groups set the rules. So,
Yes.
but also there's a level also of personal responsibility there as well. You get an animal, you need to look after it, and if you can't afford to have an animal, there are charities that will help you. If you genuinely can't afford to have an animal, the Blue Cross does a lot, Dogs Trust do a lot, but there's a mid
to access though. I mean, I think people. I was chairman of a charity that was for people who couldn't get help anywhere, and so often you say, "Oh, go and see the Blue Cross PDSA," because of the growing poverty of the country. Just like the levels before which you can access care are ever higher. So fewer and fewer people can get that help. So whilst you might be able to visit a food bank, in lots of areas of the country, you have to be on PDSA. I think moved down to only one dog could be treated, not two. So if you've got two dogs, you only get one of them helped. So that's our safety net is not as robust as it once was, and I think anyone, the number of people who must be on the cusp of can I afford to have a dog, there's a much greater number of people now who possibly can't afford the fees and the best food. There are a lot of people going into that danger zone, and I do worry about what's coming, because all of those people who got dogs during lockdown, we're seeing people going back to work, and we're seeing jobs actually being cut. And I just think rescue's a problem coming up. I don't know how they're going to get through it, because they're already bursting, aren't they? I don't think it's going to get better. I think we've got a few years of imbalance, of more dogs that are difficult for people to home, who are going to sit in rescue and are not easily going to find a home. I do worry for all our friends in rescue. It is a difficult time.
So that sort of brings me on to some questions, I think, really, because we'll have to wrap up soon, because everybody's probably finishing their late lunch breaks that they've been taking just to watch us chat to each other about puppies. Okay, so our dear Lorraine Smith had a question. Where was it? This here. Which says, what can pet dog trainers do to help clients before they go and choose their puppy, as it's usually too late to inform them by the time they book classes?
So,
any thoughts?
So I think, one of the things we kind of looked at before is offering offering a pre-puppy consultation, which you could easily do online. You could do 30 minutes. And it's one of those, depending as a trainer, you might want to offer that for free. Because potentially it's going to create you a client in the future. So maybe worth the time, maybe worth investing the time. It creates you a new client. It drives a puppy owner to a response to purchasing responsibly. So if you think about the whole industry and so on, it's about considering, have you got the time to do that? Can you afford to be doing that? Or even just offering at a cheap rate, or maybe doing something like, a pre-puppy assessment is however much, but if you book on our puppy course, once you get your puppy, you get that knocked off your puppy course or something like that. So kind of just creating incentives, because, everybody is still running a business, but it is about, doing a free talk in an evening if you've got the facilities on about by. So really, as trainers, I think we can provide education to owners, and it's about how do we provide that education to people. So yeah, that would be my thoughts, that you can offer that as maybe even part of a package. I would always be wary of selecting certain breeds for dogs and things like that, because you don't want somebody coming back going like, I bought this dog because you said to get it, and it's a nightmare. So again, really, it's about advising people on what breeds would be suitable for them, but still letting them make their final decision and final choice. I've had people come to me who've like put a deposit on a puppy, and I've ended up talking them into like walking away and potentially leaving their deposit. And it's very hard for people to do, and especially families with children. Once the children are they're involved, seeing pictures or have been to visit, it's people, parents just don't want to break their kids' hearts. It's such an emotional purchase. So there's all that kind of support and guidance as well. I've said, it's I think one client, the kids had said a bad puppy is better than no puppy, because it had bitten one of the kids, and I was like, well, actually, no, it's not. So, and I remember another client where the kids had been to see the dog, and they were prepared to take a risk on health tests and stuff like that. So yeah, it's one of those, I think, especially if people have got kids, because of the emotional purchase as well, to do the homework. But yeah, as trainers, there is a lot we can educate. It's whether people listen is the hard bit.
Great.
Fits very well with. Oh, sorry. That fits very well with what I would have said. And I think I've told Jane about what I'm up to at the moment, but I'm doing trying to launch something called the Bark Angel, which I want to have a sort of safe space where the public, when they're thinking of getting a dog, can come for help, and that the only the public would then have free advice, and we'd be encouraging them to just to come and have a look around and find out as much, loads and loads of free resources. But the idea would be that we would identify people in their local area that are angelic, people for whom they have done the work, that they are good trainers, they are good groomers, they are people who have got an ethical stance. So not just anybody that says they're got a pair of scissors, or people who are already part of organisations that have a bar. So not that we're reinventing the wheel, we're curating the organisations that already have done a bit of work of weeding out people who use unscientific methods or whatever is the so if you were to put in your postcode, you'd find people in your area that were qualified dog trainers, experienced groomers that have done at least a level 3. These are people who know your area probably really well. So if you're thinking of getting a dog, these will be the people that you will need to help you be a good pet owner, because very often the dog groomer and the dog trainer, probably the vet as well, and it's harder to qualify what is the best vet. It's very subjective, and I'm not even beginning to go with what is a good dog walker or a dog sitter. I think we're that's work to do in the future. But wouldn't it be great if you could identify people that are experienced and care about dogs, who you can then go to for advice on helping you choose a dog? Because these are people who are invested in you succeeding, because you will be a client hopefully in the future. So they're people who, yes, you will have a relationship with if you're successful and you actually get it right. And it'd be so much easier if those people can help people avoid making the horrible mistakes. And it can be just a case of helping apply blinkers, really, to stop them looking in places where they're going to get into trouble. So experience does help people avoid the situations that will end up with the dog coming home where it's wrong. And I'd like it to, in the future, for there to be a qualification that you can add on that says, you know, I've done, you know, somebody will have to invent a course on becoming, well, like a puppy life coach sort of thing, for helping people get it right. And it could be, as Jane said, great idea, do it as a you know, like a, have this one free and then come back for the whole of the post puppy stuff. I'd really like there to be a prenatal class for people who are going to get a dog, and for it to be made fun like that, like it, you know, like when you're adding a member of your family. Why not make it so that, you know, right from that moment you then surround yourself with people who care about you getting it right, not making a horrible mess of it, and embedding them into a society where you can't just pop up with a mobile phone number and start flogging a litter that you know, because there's all these people who rent pregnant bitches, and you can't.
Yeah, and going back to that, I think there's a big problem that I saw on an RVC lecture, which is there was a veterinary surgeon that was a fertility expert, and she said she was only one of 2 in the country, and they recently, I think 3 years ago, deregulated it. And she said, and now the country is full of these canine fertility clinics where people are, like, you know, doing it in their front room or doing it in an outbuilding where they're not qualified, they're not veterinary surgeons, and they're helping people get their dogs pregnant. And you think, oh, dog fertility clinic, that sounds quite nice, and it's not. You know, so terrifying. We could be all doom and gloom, but we don't want to. We want to try not to be doom and gloom. I think there are a lot of us that are doing lots of the things you're talking about, Beverley. So, I mean, speaking for myself, but I would probably speak for Jane as well, in that we often do feel like people's life coaches and therapists for their dogs. So there are lots of us that are sort of trying to fulfill that role, and it's just kind of chipping away at it all the time to get that message out there. So with that in mind, I've just got one final question, which is from Maggie. We'll just come to your question, Maggie. And she says, education and behaviour change is not easy. No. What do you think about having animal care as a subject to include in primary education? Using trainers, breeders like you to take dogs into schools, sports clubs, children's clubs, etc. How can we spread the word more effectively? Jane, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing would be great. It's like, how do you get this information to the population? And, you know, yeah, I suppose if we can get it down to the youth, the future, and we can educate those, you know, I think, you know, as it says, with, like I always say, with any education, it's only as good as the person delivering the information. So again, something like that would need good educators with regards to providing that. But yeah, you know, it's about getting out there and yeah, even community events and so on. I think we have to, like, understand, like, me as a trainer is like we discussed at the start, is we all us trainers have like a specific client base, you know, and so often we're, like, with me, I'm probably, with my client base, I'm kind of preaching to the converted. It's like, how do you get that out to the population, and how do you get that out to the, yeah, you know, I think that's a great idea, because the kids will have been educated by their parents' mindsets on what is, how to buy a dog and how to live with a dog and how to keep a dog, train a dog and rear a dog, you know, that they'll have been brought up within a belief system around that, you know. So yeah, if we can get ourselves out to the youth and the future and get that information, it can only help, can't it?
Great. All right, ladies. Well, we don't have time for kind of all the comments and the questions, so I'm really sorry if you left some lovely comments. Hopefully, I've gone through and liked all of them anyway. But I won't keep you any further. Is there any final thoughts you want to add, or do you want to let people know where they can find you? Beverley first.
Yes. Well, I'd really love to hear from anyone who considers themselves to be a breeder trainer, who wants to be part of a movement to change the image of dog breeding so that we can, one of the ways that I would like to help change things is in the way that Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall and Jamie Oliver did with chickens and eggs, where we had documentaries that shocked us a bit into changing our buying habits. I think we need a Netflix or an Amazon where we do what's wrong with the dog world and how you as a consumer can put it right. Really throw it onto the public to say, you've got to change in this generation, stop supporting breeding slavery, care about the provenance of where your dog comes from, and and show some shining examples. I've got some people that I can call on to say, here is the best breeder I've ever seen of Dachshunds, for example, who takes 8 weeks off from dressage horses to spend that whole 8 weeks rearing that litter so that at 8 weeks old they're not frightened of fireworks. Honestly, they're just the most amazing, robust puppies you could ever get. And people fly in from the Hamptons all the time to get one of these Dachshunds from Woking because they don't think they can find a puppy that's as well reared in America. Now, that to me is like a little nugget of, wow, you can actually do that. You can actually suddenly become the best in the world. Not necessarily the most top winning show dogs, but to be the best at what you do, to actually rear the best puppies from a pet person's perspective, so that everywhere they go they just can't shut up about how good you are and how amazing this puppy is, because it came to them and it slept through, and it was like getting an Apple computer rather than an Amstrad that you have to read the book for a weekend before you can start using it, because they've come as just absolutely really going to be dying to be your best friend forever, and you've just got to keep up the good work rather than put right all the wrongs that the bad breeders have done. Now, if we can create the appetite from the general public to sniff out breeders who are that dedicated to spend 8 weeks or 12 weeks really bringing their puppies up, well, I mean, I remember Jane saying that if she worked it out, that she was getting less than minimum wage for rearing the litter that she had during COVID. I don't think it should be a dream thing to do from home. So if you've got kids and you really love your dogs, maybe 1 or 2 litters that you really, really bring up brilliantly and give a lifetime of aftercare. Well, I'd like to know about it. My Bark Angel idea is to change the public by telling them how good it is to get these puppies that's bred by someone who gives a lifetime of aftercare and actually really cares about the end result. So if you're one of those, come and volunteer, barkangel.co.uk, and let's change the world.
Perfect. And Jane? Oh, you've muted yourself.
There we go. My dogs are shouting for their tea. So you can find me on Facebook, Waggawuffins Canine College. I'm also on Instagram, Waggawuffins Canine College. Also, I'm on TikTok, but I don't do TikTok drama. I just post videos of the dogs. And I'm 7 Cockers and Me on TikTok.
Great name. It's normally 7 kids and me, isn't it? Like, oh, I'm going to do 7 kids' lunch boxes this morning, and it's great. Yeah,
7 Cockers and Me. www.waggawuffins.com. You can get my book if anyone's interested in my book, How to Train Mission Control, How to Train a High Drive Dog. Is on there. I do some online stuff as well. I'm just about to launch a new website, which is exciting. Just need to get some little bits finished off for that. And there'll be some more online stuff available with that once that's up as well. And Smart Pup Box, which you can get through to Waggawuffins as well, which is actually going online. So it's going to actually be an online course. just because I've just got a bit sick of the ridiculousness of buying products that aren't available or keep going up in price.
Okay.
So for the boxes, so I've decided, so that's going to go as an online course, and that is a whole 12-month program for new puppy owners that starts at 8 weeks. So the kind of idea is like, if you're doing kind of puppy culture, you've actually got something very detailed that kind of continues through with that. So yeah, so we do Smart Pup as well, which is support for the first year for puppy owners.
Great. Perfect. Well, thank you both for coming on live. Happy National Puppy Day. I hope there's some people in the comments said they're quite broody for a puppy now. Might have put them off, but might have made them want them. If you're watching on the replay, thanks for watching the replay. Next week for the APDT, we have got Debbie Luckin from Kids Around Dogs, and she's presenting a webinar for us. So pop on the Facebook page or go to apdt.co.uk/webinars and have a look at the webinars we've got coming up. But thank you very much. It was great to have you both on the call.
Oh,
nice to have a chat.
Thank you.
And
have a great rest of the day, guys.
Jane as well.
Yeah. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.